We're now streaming live on YouTube.
But it's not, that's what it says. Okay, wait. Okay, now let me put this down. Oh, good. All right. Excellent. Okay, great. Okay, now for those of you on YouTube, we are for the first time experimenting streaming this live on YouTube. I think it's the first time. So we haven't started quite yet, but we are just about to start. And let me find the recording button. Oh, it is recording. All right, I'm going to stop that and start again. And here we go. Okay. Hello, and welcome to Jung at Harp. I'm Deborah Henson-Conant. I'm here with Kathleen Wiley. Today we are going to talk about ego. Good, bad, or other. We're talking today on Jung at Harp. Now, I'm a composer and a performer, and Kathleen is a Jungian psychoanalyst, and we both play the harp. And that's why we call this Jung at Harp. And I wanted to talk about ego today, Kathleen, because I have just started a big project that I've been putting off for a long time, and it's right now it's tentatively called the DHC Legacy Project. And I've been prolific for 45 years. I've been creating and creating and creating. I created very fast. I'd write something, I'd premiere it with an orchestra. I'd write something else, I'd premiere it. And so I never got around to publishing a lot of this. And I could say, well, I was too busy, but really, I was kind of scared that I might do it wrong, and so I just got too busy, and so now I'm on a 7-year project to actually publish all of this, and I'm aware that my ego can get in the way of sharing the gifts that I have. And I think, and I see, I'm teaching, and I have an academy, and I see a lot of students of many different ages and many different technical abilities, started the harp many different times, all kind of have the same thing about sharing. Do I deserve, am I good enough to share? Is my stuff good enough? Is it, whatever, all the stuff that goes along with it. Whereas basically, what I've come to in life is we come with these gifts, and we're the only person who can bring these gifts because they're the ones we got. And we're either going to share them or we're not going to share them. And ego can get in the way. Even if we think we're sharing them, ego can get in the way of how we share them. But ego, in terms of fear, can get in the way of whether we share them at all. And I know that you know a lot about ego and what it really is. Is it good? Is it bad? Is it something completely different?
Yeah, this is such a great question because there are so many different definitions of what ego means. And there are so many different perspectives from philosophical and spiritual traditions and, about what ego means. So, from a Jungian perspective, ego is the psychic structure that mediates between our inner world and the unconscious and the outer world and collective consciousness.
Okay,
So
the inner world of the individual, which is where these gifts come from,
that's
and,
right.
and the outer world of the collective, which is where these gifts need to go if they're actually
Right.
going to make a difference.
Yeah. And we do live in the collective. We live in community. We live in a society. We live in a family unit when we're first born. um, you know, so the ego is necessary. I think that what has happened is that ego often gets associated. Well, let me go back. The problem occurs with ego when ego thinks it's running the show. So when we get this idea, and this is where people get the big head we were laughing about, they think they're in charge. They think they, with just their limited consciousness, have done all of this. When in truth, what they've done or created is because they're connected to source. They're connected to what in Jungian psychology we call the self with a capital S, which is the totality of our psyche soul and God within. And So the problem is when ego thinks it's all alone. And when the ego can begin to realize, wow, there's this whole other dimension to me that really is in charge. It's this dimension out of which the creative impulses flow. Then with my ego and all I've learned and all I know about the collective, in the case of the creative project, then with ego, I figure out how to bring it into the world.
As you're talking, I'm thinking about gold. And I'm thinking, first I was thinking, so if I'm a 49er from 18, when I'm out there and I'm getting gold and I'm like, I made this gold, like I made it. This is me. That's not true.
That's right.
But then as you were talking, I was thinking, well, what if I'm not the person who mined for the gold? What if I'm the person who took that gold and created it into something that is, let's just go through the process. Who purified it? I don't know the process of gold, but I'm assuming that it comes out of the ground. It's probably got dirt on it. I don't know what it is. Anyway, the person who purifies it or cleans it, I made that gold. That's not true either. And then there's the artist who takes that gold and forms it into something that has artistic value as well as is made out of gold. And that artist is thinking, I made this thing, but there wasn't anything there to make. So I think that's kind of what you're saying, that here's this thing that we are mining, that's in us, this vein of, richness and amazingness, and then we are excavating it, we are purifying it, or whatever we do, we are forming it then into things, for lack of a better word, that will have meaning or that can actually connect to other humans and ignite or illuminate something in those other humans that is it seems like that's almost our job.
Job maybe we can circle back to that, but I want to say I think that your analogy of the gold is perfect. Because that really is, the ego is the miner. The ego is the alchemist in the lab purifying the gold. The ego is the artist who is shaping the gold. But the beauty of the product doesn't belong to the artist, the purifier, or the miner, because they are only working to bring out what is innately there. And I'm thinking about sculptors who talk about, what does the piece of stone want? And they commune with the stone to see, what does the stone want to become? It's not that they impose their will. And I think that what we're talking about, that metaphor, is the process of what it's like to live in conscious relationship to our own larger nature, which includes our creative self. And so that there is a life there. And your legacy project that went on hold a few years ago because your ego felt ashamed or worried or scared or whatever, or judgmental towards it, it has a life of its own, because it is your creative gold, and it just flowed from you at the time. I mean, yeah.
It's really interesting because it was a proposal that had been requested, and I spent a year making this proposal and making it all clear, and then the proposal was rejected, and so I rejected it. Mm-hmm. And but what's been really beautiful, and I think this is probably the story of many people with something that they tried to create or tried to to talk about something that they wanted to do, I think, or whatever, or somebody said you can't sing, or whatever somebody said, that you put this underground, I buried it. Like, it's almost like I took it out, I dug a hole, and I put it in that hole, and then put the dirt over it. But when I took it out, I was in a visioning workshop, and I started to come up with a vision of doing this project, and then I was like, wait a minute, I already outlined that. Let me go look at that. And I looked at it and it was alive. It was
Mhm.
just as alive or more than it was waiting for me. And I see that in the academy. I see that people who have buried their dreams
Mhm.
um, are beginning to realize, no, wait a minute, that's not over. There is a way for me to share this dream. It may be different than how I envisioned it. In particular, I may have thought that I needed to have this skill. I need to be this good or skilled. Where in fact, what I'm seeing, and one of the things that I love doing with people is realizing, no, you don't need to. Well, let me give you an example. So one of my favorite examples is one of the first people in my mentorship program, Shelley, came and she was creating her first show, and she wanted to give the audience an experience she had had when she had heard this Beethoven piece, and out of this incredible storm came this beautiful little shepherd's flute note. And she was like, but the show's in 2 weeks. How am I going to figure out how to do this? I'm going to have to, do I bring in a recording of Beethoven? How do I give that experience? And just a second, oh, my amp is on. And I said, well, wait a minute. First of all, you can tell the audience about this experience, and then you can say to them, I didn't have time to learn how to become an orchestra and become Beethoven. I couldn't bring an orchestra here. I couldn't. So just know that when I do this, that's Beethoven making an incredible storm, okay? So just know that, and I'm just going to make it as much as I can. And so in an instant, by taking the truth and giving it legs,
Mhm.
not only became human and humorous, but also gave her the opportunity to give the audience this experience, because she could make all that sound and then she could have that come out of it, but also gave them the opportunity to understand that you don't always have to be able to actually craft the whole thing in order to give the audience the experience. So what am I saying? I don't know. What am I saying here?
I think that what you're saying is that you realized when you pulled the proposal back out and saw it, that maybe you were trying to um, run before you had actually walked with the project or crawled. That we have to do one step at a time, or the old saying, you have to eat one bite of the elephant at a time. You don't eat the whole elephant at one time. And so that somewhere you do the next thing you can do. And you're always saying this to your students,
Right. That's
and
right.
that you do the next thing you can do. And once you do that, then the next thing comes and the next thing.
Right.
And that is truly the way it is when our soul's creativity is flowing. We don't know often what the end product is going to be. We may have an idea, we may have a vision, but lots of times what happens in the process of acting is that changes because we realize the project has a life of its own. The energy wants a different kind of expression.
And it sounds like I didn't allow that to change, and I had an idea. It has to happen this way. And if
Mhm.
and I got completely invested in the fact that it was rejected. Like that was like I just like made my life about I was rejected. Oh, like that was the drama, the tragedy. My work will never be seen. Um, and so that was one version of ego, is me
Mhm.
making a drama out of this. And then there's another version of ego that you're talking about, which is that it is the human part. It is the human. You said at the beginning, it's the what did you say? The advocate, or the ambassador, and the person who makes the conduit, the person who makes this possible, that connection. Like we are a living connection between whatever this outside world and the inside world. I mean, that seems suddenly really obvious, but
Yeah, yeah. So what the ego can choose. once we have consciousness, which means we're in touch with what we're feeling, we're in touch with the subtle meaning we're assigning to those feelings. So, for instance, whatever you felt in your body when you got that rejection, my guess is you attached meaning. Number one, you may have felt shame, you might have felt inadequate, you might have felt like a failure, and then you attached, this means it's no good, maybe my work is no good, I just need to forget this.
Or I'm always going to be misunderstood, blah, 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 blah.
Okay.
That's my personal favorite.
Yeah. So the ego very much got sidetracked and became the servant of those momentary emotions and the negative meaning you were assigning to the event. Whereas the ego now, after this visioning workshop, is saying, wow, maybe there is something here. Maybe there's another way to go forward. Maybe the fact it didn't happen then, it wasn't the time, it wasn't the right venue for the funding. And wow, there's a lot here that still is alive for me. And I'm going to find a way to work with it again. So the ego is now tapping into and being the servant of the soul's creative process. So the ego is always making choices, but we make choices in a split second. So it's not like we're always cognitively or consciously aware. We do it by default. And we do it by default because the ego can also, the ego can get hijacked by anything going on inside of us or outside of us.
I'm realizing that as you're talking about the two kind of roles of the ego. One is like, this is all about me. This is about me and where I fit in the world and my destiny and the destruction of my destiny or whatever. And oh, I made it. I got discovered, whatever. And then there's the role of the ego, which is, I got a body. Got it. Here we go. Like, this is what someone needed to have this body in order to, bring this stuff out. So I think that's where I get to, this is my job. This is me because I like having a job. I don't really like going somewhere and where I don't know what my job is. Like, I'd rather go to a theater and be an usher than just go to a theater and watch the show. I don't know. I don't know why, but I like to have a position or a job. And so I love that this is my job. This is my job, is to take this thing that however came out of me and get it into the hands of the people whose lives it's going to change. And even as we speak, the concerto, which is one of the pieces that's part of that, is being recorded in Salzburg, in Germany, and it's becoming the voice of an orchestra and a soloist at this moment, because that person knew how to get in touch with me and knew how to get this parts and blah 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 blah. But then there's all the people who can't do that because it's not easily accessible. So I'm well aware, and I think this is true for everyone, and certainly your work, obviously, is about empowering other people, liberating, empowering, or inspiring them so that they can do what they're here to do.
Yeah, I mean, I do think as a spiritual ethic that part of being human, it means that we do have certain gifts and talents to bring out that do make a positive difference in other people's lives. So what you're calling a job, I might think about as the soul's purpose. And I do think that we all have that. I mean, Jung says that every person's psyche does have a gradient that their energy will follow if left unobstructed. So that there is something in us at birth that wants to flow out into the world. And I do believe that part of whether we call it our job, our call, the reality, I don't know, maybe it's a fantasy, who knows? But I think part of being human is about living that truth of who we are and empowering other people to do the same. And so your job of empowering other people, I think fits for me in my own paradigm and understanding and what it means to be human. That we all need supporters on the way to call us forth. That's part of what education does. The word education has its root in the Latin word that means to draw forth, to lead. So I think that that is a part of what it means to be in community and to be in compassionate human relationship.
I love this. I love that idea of education. And was very caught by that word obstruction, unless it's obstructed. And I was thinking, well, are those obstructions always within us? And then I started thinking about society. This is a bigger subject here, but like, prejudice or anything like that, that those things, or suppression or all that stuff is clearly an obstruction. Um, and and I don't have those things aside from in my brain. Nobody's got their thumb on me, and many people do. So this is a much bigger subject, but can you say anything about that? I mean, I feel like I'm not, in a sense, I don't have a right to even talk about that, but external obstructions versus internal obstructions.
Well, so from an alchemical perspective, which is a philosophical science that looks at how do you live out of your larger truth, they say if the inner changes, then you find a different way to respond to the outer. So I think that what I would say is that my work and my focus is on helping people deal with the inner obstructions, because my experience is if you deal with the inner obstructions, you will find a way in the outer world, even though there may be lots and lots of outer obstructions. Clarissa, go ahead.
Well, as you say that, I'm realizing I have a friend who's an activist lawyer. So she's dealing with the external obstructions as well as her own internal. But okay, great. Carry on.
Yeah, no, I'm just thinking about Clarissa Pinkola Estes, who is a Jungian analyst who's very well known. She wrote Women Who Run with the Wolves. But she has a poem where she says, if you cannot, if you get pushed down and you can't get up, then lift your heart to the heavens and ask that it be filled. That you can be pushed down, you can be kept down, but no one can keep you from lifting your hungry heart to the heavens. And she has an indigenous background. So, I think she's talking about that there's something in us that, yes, there are realities of people who push us down, who will try and keep us down. And sometimes when we get a rejection for a proposal, it can feel that way, even though that is not at all the intent of the other person. But ultimately, we have to choose, are we going to keep ourselves looking down, or are we going to look up and say, okay, what next?
And I will say that for sure, I saw myself choosing to look down for years. And I'm wondering, what is it? So I know I'm not the only one. So what is it? I mean, what is it that will help people be able to even realize I'm looking down? So how do we know we're looking down? Like if I hadn't been in this visioning workshop and been ready and doing all the work that I'm doing, but let's say some people aren't aware. We always talk about this: awareness, process, relationship. So starting with awareness and then process.
Yeah, I think that the first thing is if you become aware of where you're stuck, or where you're caught in inertia, or where you're not taking action, or where you're feeling like a victim, or where your self-talk is going into the woe is me, or where you're into drama, I think all of those are indications that you're probably looking down, so to speak, to use that metaphor. And then I think we have to be compassionate with ourselves. You know, whatever our response is, it is some attempt of our psyche soul to help us keep going in the world, even when it doesn't, when it in a specific way. So I think the other thing is we have to just be compassionate and say, wow, okay, so here I am looking down. Here I am with this negative self-talk. What do I know? What's it telling me? What's there here for me to see? Where is the bit of gold in this? If we can take the rejection, and I'm thinking about over the last year, I've worked with a transformational book coach. And when I sent her the first draft of my chapter abstracts, she wrote me back. And after a couple of sentences, she said, frankly, it's boring. And I thought, gulp, But then when I stepped back from it, I thought, wow, she's right. It was very dry, very academic. And so it took me 2 or 3 months, but I was able to shift and totally rewrite them from a very different voice. And when I sent them to her, she said, wow, these are great. I loved reading them. They were engaging. So, I had to do the gulp, and I had to give myself a little time to deal with okay, I should just abandon this. Blah, blah. I'm a good teacher. I'm a good academic. Let's stay that way, but something in me wouldn't let me. And so then I could say, okay, let's look objectively. This is a skill. This is a different voice I'm learning to use. And that allowed me to make a shift. So I think what you're saying, when we get feedback from the outer world, we have to be loving to ourselves with our response. And then we need to look up to the heavens. We need to look up and say, okay, where's the gold in this? Where's the seed of truth that can really help me bring this into the world in the way that I want? And in the way that my soul, not I ego, but that my soul wants.
As you were talking, and when you said to that moment, well, okay, well, maybe I'm a good teacher, and maybe I'm not going to be a writer, right? It reminded me very much of the moment I wanted to write for symphony orchestra, and I didn't know how, and I was trying to learn, and I was doing everything I could, playing with string quartets, all that stuff. And I got a call from the Boston Pops, and they said, would you like to play with us? And I was like, yes, and I want to write it. And they were like, okay. But I really didn't know what I was doing. And so when I took the score to the conductor, and when I look back on it now, I can't believe he didn't say, like, are you freaking kidding me? No. But he was very nice, and he was like, this is not going to work. But I had that moment when I was like, okay, I guess I'm not good at that. And all right, so that's not going to be in my life. I'm going to be this and I'm going to be that, but I'm not going to be this one thing I really wanted to be. And then for reasons I don't know, but I wish this happened in my life more, something in my head asked the following question. And it was something like this. So we said, this is not going to work. Oh, what would make it work? What could we do to make this work? And it was, that moment before I asked that question, I was full of like, this is never going to happen in my life. This is never going to happen in my life. And by the way, my Grammy nomination was for exactly that music that I was writing at that point, but way down the road, another, 10 years. But if I hadn't asked that question, what can we do? What can we do to make this work? And he thought for a second. He said, I know a guy who could fix this. And it was just like what you said, Kathleen. I knew what I wanted to say, but I didn't have the technical ability. I just needed a much higher level of it. And I didn't know who could give me that or who could add that. And I said, okay. And he told me the guy was, and how much do you think he was going to cost? And he gave me a price that was pretty much almost exactly what I was going to get paid. And I thought, great, this'll get done. And, and it was amazing, and the review, was glowing, and it was the right decision. But it was one of those moments where I was like, okay, I see, I can't do this on my own. So, and I asked the question. There are many times when I don't ask that question. And so I dig in and dig down into that hole of, you can't, this is not going to work.
Yeah, I mean, that's such a beautiful story, because I'm thinking about how powerful it is when our ego can turn to our larger self and say, how are we gonna, how can we make this work?
Right.
And yes, we need to ask in the outer world, because all of us, all of us are still growing and evolving. I mean, that's part of the beauty for me of my understanding of Jung's work and his understanding of our psyche soul, is we're always continuing to evolve, that there's always more creativity until the day that we transform from this body. And my guess is we're still being creative in a different way. I mean, I really, so I think to always be asking, how can we make this work? And to realize that we need input from the outside world, that there are people who have skills, who have understanding. You said to me, we were talking 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I was going to disavow how I could never be a professional harpist. And you said, oh, wait, I could. And I said, that's what I'll do in my 70s. And you said, come to me and I'll help you do that. And I thought, you know what? Yeah. If that was something I felt led to do, called, that was right, I'm sure you could help me do that. And so I think that what you were back to our job being to empower people, I'm so grateful for that director who said to you, I know someone who can fix this. And I'm so grateful you asked. And I'm so grateful for the people in my life that I've asked, or who saw I needed something, and who, when I couldn't ask, could say, this can be fixed, or you can learn this person can help. Because I think that we do need each other to do that for one another.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about that. I'm thinking about the example that you just gave about me seeing you, and I see you without the limitations within which. So when you say, be a professional harpist, my world of what it means to be a professional with the harp, what it means to be someone who is making a difference in the world with who they are and the harp, is very different than sort of the box that we think of what it means to be a professional harpist. And this is why I'm so proud and moved as the people in my academy start sharing who they are with the harp as a platform. And everyone's using the harp, but everyone's using it differently, and it's becoming, it's something that is very moving, and inspiring and empowering and liberating, because you see that. And I just realized that, when I'm stuck inside of a technological or whatever, like, I don't know, I don't get it. I'm trying to go from point A to point B, but I just keep going from point A to point B, point A to point B. And that's not the way. It's like, stop going to point B. Point B is like, forget it.
Right.
Backwards to point ZZ, and then go through the wormhole, and then you're over here. But you're right. It does take someone who can see outside of that. So asking for help. So to answer that question, which is, okay, how do we know when we're stuck in our ego, basically? And that is that we're going into our games. I'm a victim, complaining. This person's better than me. This person got something I didn't get. We're in the past, we're in the future. I'm thinking about, it's going to be like this, it's going to be like this, it's going to be like this, or I'm worrying about what's in the past. So we're not present in who we are. Anytime we can observe that. And then, so now we get the awareness. Oh, I'm stuck. I got the, like, I can't this. Even if we could get clear to that, to when we're like, I can't XYZ. Okay, so that's step one, awareness. Process.
So the process is going to be, now the ego is going to reach within to whatever your word, language, image is for the larger self and say, how do I get out of this?
Oh,
How do I move forward? What do I do to fix this? But I don't want to use the word fix. You're going to ask your own inner guidance. Your visioning workshop opened you up to that.
yes, and I'd take one word out of it. I. Not how do I get out of this, but not
Me.
even how, or like what. It's almost like I don't even, there's something open. I did say, I remember said to someone else, how can we fix this? Or how can we change this? And that was a person who knew because we were doing a specific thing. So I'm drawn to my heart because I'm thinking that this is where meditation opens us up.
Yes.
And circumstance and surprises. So I just made this in Blueprints for Creativity. There's one of the things I teach people how to do is this visioning music, where you take a very simple, like, let's see. This is just it's got an A on the bottom and it's all the white keys. And then it's got a G on the bottom and it's all the white strings. And then it comes to the F and it opens up all the strings. So it's a simple idea. Anybody, whether they played the harp or not, could play with that idea. And so it's not about learning the technique of it, but it's about putting my mind on something that allows me to have a feeling while I have my mind on it. And allows me to actually be expressive within whatever technique I have. And to not move on until I feel like moving on. And to allow myself to do that, feeling the opening up, what it feels like. And then to come back again. To keep coming, to have something, whether it's a meditation or whether it's running, but to be opening up to maybe that question, where can I get help, or where is help being offered, or who it's kind of like a who can help me here, who has an answer. I don't know, is that
Yeah, but I think the meditation I love, because for me meditation is, my definition of meditation is listening for the inner guidance of the divine. That to me is what meditation is. And you can meditate with your instrument. You can go into meditation drumming. I mean, there's so many. You can go into meditation just working with your breath, meditating on an object. But ultimately, what you're doing is opening up that larger self, which is the source that we need to move forward. That's where the energy is to clear any obstructions. The outer world, when we ask for help, can provide needed skills, resources, support. But we all know when we've had outer world support, but something inside of us still wouldn't let us act. So, yeah. And so I think that that meditation to listen and realize, the ego is not the source of life within our body mind, but the larger self, or what is I call the God within, is that there is something that fuels us that, again, spiritual traditions talk about in different ways. But that's what we're talking about, tapping into and asking for help when we are pushed down, kept down, and we're feeling defeated and despairing. Then that's when we have to look up or look deeper within, whichever, to that part of us that's bigger, that is bigger than that momentary feeling state, the momentary ego. So that's the other thing to image, the ego is, like this big, but the larger self is all of it. And so that's part of the problem with the ego. The ego gets caught just, oh, this is the one thing I am, whereas the self says, whoa, 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 there's a lot more here. And some of that may want to come out.
I love that image. I love that. And it's making me think of, again, it's going to make me think of the instrument that we think that the point of, it is the point of connection is right here. It's right there. The point of connection is right there, but that is not in any way. And I just realized that when we play an instrument, we are in a sense emulating or that experience of connecting with another through a small point that opens up something much bigger than we can expect. And that's why I think it's also so powerful when I'm just realizing when we're working with a blueprint or we're working with like these motivic things that I'm in the blueprints for creativity, the motivic suite. You don't know what we're gonna play. You have some guidelines. It's almost like a game. And you wait until you hear it, and then you go to the next one, and then you may come back because you're not ready to open up, but in every moment, those fingers are the point of connection where you're opening up to everything, and you're opening it up to yourself, and you can do it over and over and over and over again as we make that space for the change or the knowing or the doing or whatever it is. So what I'm hearing is that we go and it's almost like we go to a place of asking and not even necessarily asking for a specific thing. It's like we go to a place of where we're willing or something.
No, I think there's truth to that. I think that part of asking is we have to be willing to receive what comes. If we ask for a very specific thing, then we may very well miss what it is we need. You went to that pops director with one thing, asking for one thing from him, but you got something else. You were open to receiving the something else, which then opened you up.
Right. And I'm also thinking about, emails. I just got an email from somebody this morning and she was like, well, I went to your website and I couldn't figure out, when does, Blueprints for Creativity start? And, how does it, and she was asking all these questions. I was like, very cool. I see where she's confused. I see what happened. And it's because I'm not being clear about this. If I get clear about this, it opens up this, it's almost like she told me what she needs next. And it was a question that I've had but not known the answer to. So I'm realizing that I don't know where the answer is going to come from. But interestingly, how odd is this? It came to me during meditation. What a surprise. I mean, I didn't think about it while I was writing to her, but then as I was opening up to it, I was like, she just asked the question that opens up the answer that I didn't have.
See how beautiful that was, because you didn't look down. You didn't go into blaming her. You didn't, you thought, and you just, I call it sometimes like you let it perk in the back of your, of your brain. And then your larger self could shine a light somewhere. And you had an aha.
Yeah. I'm realizing that I had the aha in part because I was doing something that took my mind, it required mindfulness, but not manipulation. And so in a way, my mind was both occupied and free.
Yes.
And so I'm seeing again that the awareness, as we become aware that we're stuck, and sometimes other people can help us be aware. By whatever, by they're confused by something or they're frustrated with something that can help us see. Then our process is to go into it or ask for help, ask for a person for help or ask inside for help. And then the relationship shifts. And I definitely experienced that this morning. That the relationship, wow, this is a problem. I wasn't clear here. Oh, I wasn't clear because I didn't see what was possible. Now I see what's possible. And that relationship shifted.
Right. And the ego could have never made that happen by itself. You couldn't have made that relationship shift if you had held on, the ego had held on to its momentary understanding and attachment to what you'd already done in the moment. But the ego was open to something unexpected, something unbidden, and something that invited you to see differently. And you went with that.
Yeah, and now that you're saying that, I'm thinking about the ego's job. And when you, at the very beginning, you talked about the ego as a conduit,
Mhm.
worlds. And I feel like it's almost like the ego didn't understand the message, and then got the message. Oh, that's what it is. And then was able to start running with it, or start, oh, I can put that, almost like a new blueprint or something like that. But
Mhm.
not do that. It could not do that without being open.
That's right. And without asking and without receiving.
Right, being willing to receive and not deflecting.
Yes.
Okay, so we started out with the question, ego, good, bad, or other? And we're definitely seeing that it is other. And I'm seeing it as a beautiful human and flexible, can be flexible or can be inflexible. But as much as we can be flexible with what that our ego helps us act, and if it can be flexible to open up for help.
And flexible to be willing to feel our littleness and our limitations so that we can then reach to our larger self to feel our expansiveness and our resourcefulness and all that flows. It's being willing to feel both the limitations and the expansiveness.
Almost like what I'm hearing is I keep coming back to being open to that expansiveness,
Mhm.
opening up to that expansiveness in whatever way we can find to do that.
Right. That's right.
And that means not being closed to how this is going to happen.
Right, which means that the ego, in the sense that pop psychology talks about it as negative, the ego with its attachments to how it should be done, with your expectations, with judgments, criticisms, has got to say, that's not working for me. That's not the right use of my conscious energy and attention.
When you say that, I think of a ship encrusted with or whatever, encrusted with all this stuff and just can't move, versus when that is free and we can move.
Yes.
Okay, well, Kathleen, I know we've come to the end of our time and today, and once again, thank you for this incredible journey into a question.
Mhm.
I love that that's what we do.
Yes, I do too. I do
And
too.
I love that we can each bring our experience, and it just opens, it makes me realize what relationship is all about.
Yes. Yes.
So thank you, thank you, thank you. And I look forward to seeing you again next week.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye bye. All right, we are still live on YouTube. I'm just going to go check and see like that work. Let me just go here. Oh, someone said hello. Yay, hello.
Okay. Okay.
That was fun. All right, great. So, but I will probably take this and put it up. I'm not sure how we'll put it up. That was really fun. Oh, I'm going to stop the YouTube and then